What did you mean by they don't want to tell the China story anymore?
People are starting to look for other options. We see people searching out near shore or made in the United States.
Like, it always felt to me like the DR is plenty of labor, plenty of willing people. Is this a spot that starts to replace Chinese production work in any way? Made in DR as opposed to made in China. Are you seeing that right now?
I've met a handful of American families that live in the DR out of 12 million people.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I can look at Miami from here. Like, where's everybody at? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And not only that, the Dominican Republic has these zona francas, which are free trade zone agreements with the United States for zero import-export tax. Like, why is everybody not down here making stuff, right?
Why aren't they? Let's talk about why the DR. Why did you move? You're here permanently. Like, I'm a 2-year resident, but you're here.
Yeah.
Why the DR?
Great question. So, we sold a bunch of stuff in the Midwest, and my wife and I, at different points in our lives, were like each separately ready to kind of like go on to the next stage of life. Yeah. And so for the first time about 2 years ago, at the same moment in time, we were both at that spot where we're like, all right, our time in our community is at an end. We're ready to explore. And got through COVID and all that craziness, and we were like, all right, let's go. 3 young kids, 11, 9, and 7. And so they're super healthy and like ready to take on life. And so threw them in the, in the plane and headed out. But a good friend of mine, Josh Porter, started an organization here in Dominican Republic about 4 years ago called Vida Plena. So after we sold some things, I made a commitment to just like be open to traveling anywhere and learning about anything, calling mentors, like just spending some time, kind of like resetting and looking for opportunities and what we wanted to do next. And so with open hands, we just kind of like, as a family, explored what those options looked like. And my wife and I both, made the commitment, like I said, to just never really turn down an opportunity to talk to somebody. And so Josh had heard, like, I had some free time, and he's like, hey, you got to come down to the DR, check out what I'm up to. And that was in October, and 2 months later, we moved to the DR.
Isn't that crazy?
So, I mean, that's the super quick version, right? But like, yeah, it's amazing, and we're here, and we love it. And we at that 1 year mark, we as a family made the decision to like be here indefinitely.
When was that? When was the 1 year mark?
In January.
January.
Yeah.
All right, so you're about, as we record this, you're coming up on a year and a little over a year and a half at this point.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually just decided to extend one more year.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's great.
Like this weekend. We
awesome.
just
Good.
decided.
Good.
So we were with the Van Winkles. We went
Yeah.
to Cabaret Day.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about it, and then actually it's funny. My oldest son, his whole drawback is his school, his Acton Academy. We just learned they're suspending operations for at least a year. So he's like, okay, fine, then we'll stay and go to, there's a school in the village called,
Yeah.
so he's going to be they're going to be going there. Very similar to the
Nice.
concept we had up there. So
Yeah.
we're around.
It's huge fact. Schooling's massive decision, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
And we'll get into that. So we're going to double up this episode between your story, but also some levels of expat life. So I put out a questionnaire to some members of the kind of the listener group, and they came back with a whole bunch. I put some of them on a list. I gave them to you as well. I sent them to you, but we're going to break it down for those listening into 5 different areas. So the first is considerations for moving. The second will be kids and family. The third is taxes, finances, that sort of thing. The fourth is, living abroad, like deeper considerations. And then the last one is the most frequently asked question that I get by far, and I'm going to save that to the very end of the show. So wait till you hear that. But let's start with a couple of these. So why the DR makes sense. What for you, if there was any, were like the most challenging things to overcome? So the question comes from Dustin. What are the most challenging things or mindsets that you had to overcome in that first 30, 90, 180 days of being here?
I'm excited to hear your answers too on these.
Yeah, we'll dive in.
All
We'll
right.
do it. But yeah.
The friend of ours that lived here for 4 years, he's like, you're an American. Don't try to be a Dominican. Like, it's not going to happen, right?
You're
like my
pants,
skin,
though.
I know.
You're wearing
I got
pants.
pants on. My
These
skin's
guys
getting
are wearing
dark.
pants. I don't know why Dominican men in 90,000 degree weather wear pants.
You
But
have to.
Anyway, go ahead.
So we kind of came down here with that mindset a little bit, like, hey, we're Americans, and let's be proud of that. Like, anywhere we're at, in any town, any place we're living, it's like we're all in. Like, we're all in community. We're all in building that and building place. And so just kind of remembering that was, I think, big for us. The other 2 big things, and I've heard this a lot as we kind of got counseling before we made the move, was that, for us, culture and language were both a barrier, right? Like, we weren't fluent in Spanish. None of our kids were. Like, it was just a new thing for us. Yeah. And so that was a little daunting. But the advice we got was, like, Spanish will definitely be a hurdle. But the cultural hurdle will be more. And I didn't really, I mean, admittedly, I like didn't believe it. I'm like, oh, come on, like, it's no problem. But I would say after being here, even a few months, it was the cultural, and I think with most countries, like the cultural aspect was definitely harder to
Give some specifics.
Yeah.
What are the cultural hurdles that you had to overcome?
I got to be careful. These guys are going to.
They're hurdles. They're not, you know.
I think that, and this is being like totally honest, and a part of this is kind of like what I do in my job. But yeah, there's a lot more racial tension here,
Yeah.
and a lot
I've talked about this.
more developed class structure.
Yep.
And a lot deeper class. Like, you know, I've heard it said there's like 13 Dominican classes, right? And it, you know, it's very complicated. And like, do you go out to eat every night? Where do you live? You know, like, I mean, some of this exists in the Western civilized world, but like here in the DR, it's a lot more complex. And so I think that's part of it. I also think that from what we've seen in the areas we work in, the color of your skin, and that being darker is a little bit harder to function.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen machine guns shoved in guys' faces, thrown in vans, and driven to the Capitol.
Dominicans.
Because of their skin. Yeah.
Right. Thinking they're Haitian.
Legal, you know, visa-holding Dominican citizens.
Yeah.
And so that was wild. It's wild. And so that again, that's partly because of where I work. But, you know, we feel that. I think that, you know, I think on the positive side too, you know, you've experienced, like you can walk into like a store and be surrounded by strangers and everybody greets you and says hello. So there's some like really positive things too. I think for me and my personality, I'm super direct and I'm like ready to, you know, I'm not like, good morning, how are you on my text. You know, here it's like, everyone's like,
coffee.
You just stop. Yeah, let's have some coffee. Let's talk. Let's say hi. You know, I'm just kind of like, let's go. Right. Yeah. So that's been really tough. I think another good example is just for me and what I've experienced is it's extremely hard to gain trust as an American in the DR. So even though, you know, I'm not black, I still have, I've been in shops where they didn't want to serve me.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't even sell something to me. I was like asked to leave. So there's a really interesting dynamic here that I think there's a lot of parts of the DR that want to be like or be the United States, but at the same time, there's a threatening kind of like, hey, who's this gringo in our community that might open a business that's more successful than what we have and maybe take a little bit of our pie. Yeah, I feel that a little bit. So yeah.
No, it's interesting. I'm more insulated. Your businesses are operating here in the DR. You work with a lot of women. We'll talk about Vita Plana here in a minute. So you're seeing it. You're in neighborhoods where there's groups of Dominican nationals, Haitian nationals, like a block away, and there's a tension there and everything. The design of my life has been that I can operate. That's why my problem, I haven't learned Spanish, because I'm on Zoom all day, right? Like I operate kind of, in the U.S. even though I'm physically here. So you get to see that a lot. But even, the news articles, the stories, I know of people that were just grabbed by immigration that are just dark skinned, just because they're dark skinned. They may even be never even lived in Haiti. They just might be dark-skinned Dominicans, and they're sent to Santo Domingo, even with a card, a cédula. Absolutely. They're sent to Santo Domingo and then have to find their way back. Can you imagine that? Imagine just because of the color of your skin, you're assumed not to be from your own country and grabbed and sent to a city 2 hours away, and then figure your way back when you're making $1.50 an hour.
Right. Absolutely. It's wild.
So that's the stuff that is really, really. Again, I'm more insulated from it. You're seeing it more day to day, but it is perspective. We get in our echo chamber a bit in a country, like, all the problems, and they're there. I'm not denying there's not race and all these things in the United States, but when you go to another place, right, you see some different things, like, wow, maybe not so bad sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, you feel that. I mean, not just in business, I feel like I've stepped back 20 years in time, being from here to the United States, and I think with kind of some of these racial issues, it's like, oh, we're back 100 years in time. So
the cultural stuff too. It's funny you say that. Stopping by is a thing here. We're not used to that anymore. When we were growing up, people would stop by, right?
Pop in, man.
Pop in. Yeah. Now you have to schedule ahead, call from the driveway. Hey, we just happen to be here. Is it okay if we approach the house, kind of thing? Here, though, my wife's uncle said, hey, why haven't you come by? She's like, well, they haven't invited us. He's like, you just come by.
Right, come on.
It's an hour away, but that's the expectation. So there is some cultural differences there. Similar. I think just the culture it's the Dominican. We came into another culture and we have to adapt to it. So it's a little bit more, I don't want to say slower, but like you said, the pace of life doesn't have that urgency of, you picture like running around downtown Manhattan or whatever. It doesn't have that frantic, frenetic pace here like you do in the
Unless
United
you're in
States.
a car, and then
Unless you're in a
yeah,
car.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's like a video game, man. Driving here is like playing a video game. It's incredible. All right, let me get one or two more on this topic of considerations. Hey, Tribe listeners, I want to tell you about the sponsor for this episode, Gobundance. Gobundance is a community that I belong to. It is the tribe for healthy, wealthy, generous people who choose to live epic lives. Everyone knows that who you surround yourself with matters. You always hear cliches like proximity is power. You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. All are true. Gobundance offers you a place for you to go into that's already has a culture built around relationships, health, wealth, contribution, adventure, all grounded in being held accountable to whatever goals you set for yourselves. Learn about how our one sheets help you unlock the next level of you. Learn about how getting into an accountability pod with 3 or 4 other members can drive you forward faster than you ever have been able to before. Listen, right now, what I want to talk to you about is our Gobundance Emerge community. For anyone with a net worth up to $2 million, go to gobundanceemerge.com and apply. Let's get on a call. Let's talk about what membership looks like. Be ready to invest time and energy and money into you so that you can become that best version. People ask, hey, how did you quit your job? How did you move abroad? How'd you do all those things? How am I even having this episode as an expat? It's because I invested in myself specifically by joining the Gobundance tribe. Go to gobundanceemerge.com. If you're over 2 million, go to gobundance.com. Apply there. There is a community within Gobundance for you. Now back to the show. How do you even start the process of moving? Places to live, so on and so on. How did you start? How did you make the 2 months after you said, hey, we're going to move down there? How did that process start for you?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this one, and I've tried to help a few people trying to make that decision. And I think there's probably very few places in the world where an American hasn't been or lived.
Yeah, true.
And when you really dig into it, you probably could find someone that's either been there or is there currently. And so I think as people consider where to go, it's absolutely worth the homework to try to get connected to someone else in that country and even better in that town or community. And so for us, that was the amazing part of our experience is we had this family here that had been here 4 years, and they're like, go to this school, live in this neighborhood, don't do this, do this. So it was just like day one, we're like ready to roll, right? And so I think that is absolutely invaluable. And so I guess, that's my advice for someone is really vet out and search for someone with experience in the place you're trying to go. Cause I think you could probably find somebody to be there. And other than that, we visited here a few times before we made the move, looked at houses. I'm sure similar experience, like some real estate, really tried to envision ourselves in the communities that we were going to live in and where our kids were going to go to school and kind of walk through the pace. Yeah. We then brought our kids here for 10 days without telling them we were going to move and just had a really fun vacation. Yeah. But we we drove them by the school they were going to go to and go to the mall.
Would it be cool to go there?
Yeah. And then then when we got back and processed that as a family, there was a point of reference for hey, remember where we just were? We're going to do this and
That's
this.
Great.
And so that helped out a lot too. Yeah.
We threw our kids on the plane and told them we're moving.
That works. Yeah.
So you were a little bit more generous or kind to them than we were. But my wife's from here originally, so we had a little bit of a, like you said, that connection with relatives. But ours was we booked the flights. And then we booked an Airbnb for 6 weeks, I think it was, 5 or 6 weeks, to kind of feel it out. And we did Punta Cana, which everything you hear, like you said, from it's so safe, but it's also very boring. There's not a lot of community there. So we were there for 5, 6 weeks. That let us explore, and then we found the village where we live, and eventually moved there. So but I think for me, if I'm giving the advice on this, there is a point at which you just have to kind of take step 1. And then step 2, step 3, step 4 reveal themselves. Book the flights, get here, get a house. Yeah. The schools are here. You'll find a school. You'll find a car. That it's just you're human. You're going to you have human ingenuity. You're going to find a way to get it done.
Totally. So. And I do think the U.S. you realize the U.S. passport is incredibly strong, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the world. Yeah. But I'm pulled over here, I show a passport. I want to go to a bank, I show a it gets you out of a lot of.
I'm technically illegal here.
So am I. I've been here a year and a half illegal.
You just reset.
That's true. I've been good for.
You just reset. You got 30 days.
That's right.
But to your point, when I leave, it's $50. Yeah. That's it. If I'm here over 30 days, it's $50. If I had a Haitian passport or some other, so you're right. That is very powerful. All right, let's talk about what you're doing. What is Mud Love?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take a step back, but in that process that I told you about, in kind of that year of searching and traveling and trying to figure out what to do, coming to the DR, visiting, falling in love with Vita Plena and what kind of the missional components of what were happening here in country.
By the way, real quick, Vita Plena, abundant life, full life.
Full life,
That's
full
the
life.
translation.
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and so we came back home, and some dear friends of ours that founded a pottery and jewelry company for over a decade ago. We've been, just so close with them and kind of seen a roller coaster of business and their ups and downs. And so, literally, I'm like laying in bed one night, like, hey, how do we make this happen? How do we turn this into something that's scalable?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, hey, let's buy this pottery and jewelry company in Indiana. And let's buy this, at the time, nonprofit, impact company in DR, and let's smash them together, and let's scale it and take production, outsource it to the DR, start producing in-house. So Vita Plena originally was a contract manufacturing small company, and so we just kind of took it over and said, hey, we're going to do 100% of Mud Love production now in the DR, and we're going to hire more women, and we're going to scale this thing. And so that idea kind of formalized in Indiana, at 3 o'clock in the morning when all irrational thoughts happen. Yeah. And so then I kind of created a value hypothesis and went through it with some people that were much smarter than me and had a lot more experience in manufacturing than I did. I had none, still barely have any. And just kind of vetted it out and talked to people that I really trusted and said, hey, let's prove or disprove this together. Tell me why this won't work, right? Or why it will. And so in doing all that, we had some smart people that cared about us and said, I think you might have something, this might work. And that was all I needed, right? As an entrepreneur, it's like, that slight chance, right? All right, I'm in, let's go. Let's buy the tickets. And so, we've really done just that. The month I got here, I spent a few months just kind of again, your life kind of, in a good way, explodes when you enter into a new culture and language. And so just making sure the family was okay and we were okay and the new job was okay. But getting settled and then bringing most of Mud Love's production to the DR and having predominantly Haitian women make those products here.
Yep. Yeah. So Mud Love is a ceramic bracelet, custom bracelet company. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah. All of our products have some type of clay component to them.
Yeah.
So in its history, it's been plates and bowls and mugs and bracelets and all that kind of things. We do home decor clay letters and
And so the physical production of that was being done in Indiana.
Correct, 100% in Indiana.
Okay. And what was we talked about this a little bit once before, but just for here, what was the cost it would be for material cost and labor cost when producing it in Indiana?
Yeah, so I just ran this report to kind of look back and see where we've come from, which was really fun. But our gross margin was about 37% before we got here, and now we're at about 51%. So we're set out and have done a lot of what we've meant to do in reducing costs. But I mean, across the United States and in Indiana, the cost of labor is a little bit less, but we're $15 to $20 an hour for an employee. Here at paying triple the market rate and accomplishing all kind of the missional goals that we want, we're $2 to $3 an hour.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's an incredible savings.
Yeah, and $2 to $3 an hour is still double, triple the going rate?
Yeah, for sure. The minimum wage in the DR, if that even means anything, is 86 cents an hour.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely insane. In Indiana, something to clean up. What were you said you sold everything. What did you sell?
Yeah, still some things left to sell, unfortunately. But we were in we founded a hospitality group in 2006 after graduating college. I was 23, no idea what I was doing. And it just kind of grew to multiple concepts in Indiana, one in Wisconsin, a couple in Indianapolis.
These are restaurants.
Restaurants, an event center. We have a little hotel. So in processing that, we, as a family, and I mostly as a husband and wife, we decided and kind of felt like the more we let go of, proportionally would be the amount that we would be able to grow. And so...
What do you mean by that? The more you let go of, proportionally would be the amount you'd be able to grow?
I think that, we all have things that we're holding on to that probably define us in good or bad ways. And so I processed that for about a year, and my thing wasn't money or business or success or, whatever word. For me, it was reputation. I had spent my entire life in Indiana. I felt like I could go to almost any city and know someone, be recognized, thought that I'd run some pretty good businesses. And that's what I was holding on to, and what defined me. And so for me, processing that, the hardest thing for me to let go of was that. And in selling some of our core businesses in our hometown and concepts, and really throughout Indiana, we felt like that might be the best way to kind of turn the next page and move forward. And so that's exactly what we did. Even just like traveling to a new country, like one step at a time, it was like, all right, let's sell this one and let's package these up and sell this one. And so we just kind of went through that process. And it was really great, honestly. Things were going pretty well in some of the places, and it was like, there's not a bad reason we're selling, right? It's just, it's time for us to move on. And so in some of the deals, we were able to work on profit sharing with new ownership and their managers that were there, and just some really fun things to set up the next kind of regime for success.
So you sold even with in circumstances where you maintained a portion of ownership and you receive a profit share as opposed to just a lump sum.
Exactly. Some of the ones we went from like owner operator to more of like an investor share, right? And then release some equity and to an operating group, and then we could kind of take a step back, and then like I'll visit once or twice a year and just make sure everything's okay.
How did you make that win-win for you and for them? A situation like that, it's win for you obviously, but how did you make it win-win?
Quite honestly, we just gave up more than we probably should have, right?
Okay.
And it's like, hey, this is our decision. We're the ones pulling out of this thing. So let's set someone else up with boots on the ground and skin in the game that's going to believe in this thing and work really hard. And for us, that meant releasing and giving up a little bit more equity than the deal probably should have been. But again, that was our decision. Like, we're the ones pulling out of here, right? And two, with the partners that we did have that were involved, those are hard conversations to have, right? Like, hey, we want to move out of the United States, and you're not going to see me again, right? Those are tough conversations, right? So like, how do we make this work for them too? And I think to do that, we had to give up a little bit more. And
but that's the thing. You're not going to remember your percentage equity on your deathbed. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be like, we gave up 78%. We should only give 72%. You're not going to remember that on your deathbed. You're going to remember the experience that you have now, the fact that you exposed your kids to a new culture and all of that. So,
and there's so many schools of thought. They're like hold on to equity, keep the percentage high, do whatever you can. I'm like, this is probably terrible to say on a business, but I'm like it's like, I want people in this with me, man. I want friends in this thing and colleagues in this thing that are all fighting, and you want 10%? Great, take 10%. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
So.
The abundance mindset thing, I think, is huge. So I went through this recently where I felt like constricted. Things weren't going exactly the way I wanted them to. So I'm trying to apply more control to make it happen. And there was this mindset shift in me, and it's, I don't know, there's a comparison part. I'm comparing myself to other people who are smarter and more organized or whatever it might be. But there was this epiphany or this thing, like, I've always sort of operated on the idea that it'll work out. And that's allowed me, kind of what you just said, has allowed me to sort of come from a place of, 10%, 15%, 8%, 20%, that's cool. Like, if it requires less of me and other people are able to do the things that I'm really not good at, which is most things, awesome. And two, if it's making an impact, 8% of 5 million is better than 20% of 1 million. You know what I mean? I think that math works. Yeah. But I'm sure it does.
I understand.
But you get my point, right? Like, I've always had that mindset as well. So maybe it is you're giving away too much or whatever. But I've always felt like guilty when somebody who's much more, numbers driven, organized, spreadsheet type of person, like, explains to me why that decision might have been, I might have been able to do something different with it. I always feel bad in that moment. But again, I'm not going to remember it when I'm dead. I'm just going to remember that, hey, I was able to carve out the life I was, which I'm enjoying right now, by having that abundance mindset. So, all right. So you sell these businesses, or you partner up, or you tell your partners, hey, I'm out, some sort of share. Did you do lump sums at all, or is it all profit share? Did you have any kind of lump sum payout when you left?
Yeah, so a few things we did that way, like especially the ones in our hometown. We really felt we had some partners that were willing to take those over and run with them, which was important to us. Like, part of the deal was like, hey, this continues on because we really love it, and it's a part of the community, and we want it to stay that way. Yep. And then part of the deal was, let us identify who the new kind of like operator will be on the ground. And so we were able to do that with a couple of deals. And it was like, we're lump sum, we're totally out, done. And that was great.
Is that your runway here? Is it money to invest in the business? Is it money to invest in other assets for you to build wealth? Like, what's that, when you take that lump sum, was it like, hey, this is going to be our seed money for living for a year or two? Or was it allocated across a few different things?
Yeah, I think all of that, yeah, like definitely created some runway,
Yeah.
right? And so that we were able to come here and be able to take a breath and
Yeah.
not be like completely stressed out every day with a paycheck. And I think also too, it allowed us to really step back and think about what we wanted to invest in next. So I like to say, like, my wife and I spent, our adult lives building a container, and we were ready to figure out what to fill the container with. And so those next decisions for us were, what are we going to fill this? We built this container. What are we going to fill it with? And let's make sure the things we put in there are really, really special. And the partnerships that we have going forward are about our relationships with those people, and not just about the percentage of equity or this guy's really smart, or like, we want to build relationship with our partners.
Any epiphanies on that at this point? Do you have any sense of where you might be going?
Yeah, good question. I think we're still looking, but I think one thing that we really feel fulfilled in this endeavor is that it's dual impact. Like, no margin, no mission. Like, we got to make money. Like, I don't really understand what a nonprofit company is, or how, you got to make money, right?
Sure.
And so for us, it's like, that nonprofit that we acquired was, let's make this a for-profit, keep all the missional components the same, but let's make money. Like, unapologetically, let's make money, and then let's take that and reinvest it in the community. And so I think, again, the dual impact for us was, let's make money, but then let's also do something that has a lot of communal impact here, and build place here for people that don't have a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so, we felt like we did that a little bit in hospitality, but it's in our face. I just needed something more in my face, right? And so this is like at work every day in my face, and I love it. Yeah.
So you've got this margin increase of 14 points from when you had the operations in Indiana versus moving to the Dominican Republic. You mentioned about hiring Haitian women, and we touched on Vida Plena. Can you go a little deeper on Vida Plena, what your mission is with that, why that's tied to Mud Love? Give a little bit of context there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, visiting my friend that had been here for a number of years and founded Vida Plena, really fell in love with what he was trying to do. So the other part of my life, which you touched on in the beginning, was that I'm on the board for Second Mile Missions, which is a mission in country, in the United States, but has multiple schools here in the DR around this Punta Cana area. And they, really exist and are here to educate youth, right? And that they believe, and I believe, that that's the greatest way to promote change here in country is through education. Yeah. The DR has one of the worst school systems in the developed world, worse than Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, right?
Crazy.
Worst school system here, public school system here in Haiti. So part of it for me was that, being on the board, and now the only board member in country for Second Mile in those schools. I wear that hat weekly and take it really seriously and really love it. And then the Vida Plena aspect kind of dovetails into that, in that part of what we do here in hiring these Haitian women is then we'd sponsor their kids to go to the school that I'm on the board for. And our workshop is actually connected to one of those schools. So the women's children come to school.
It's a beautiful school.
For free, basically, right? And then get to go to school right there, and they can look out during their breaks and see their kids running around and laughing and playing. Yeah. So we really liked that. Here in Punta Cana, like other similar resort towns, you have about 130 hotels all along the beach. A lot of those are owned by Russia and Spain. You can Google this, but DR is like infamous for human trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking. A lot of that happens right here on the eastern side of the Dominican Republic. But because of all those hotels, the most in the DR, right across the highway from that is where our office is, and there's a massive population of Haitian refugees. So within a couple blocks of our schools and workplace, we figure about 30,000 Haitians living in these kind of like transient communities, shanty towns. I mean, you've been through them. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. We'll share some footage of that on the YouTube portion of this interview. But go for it.
And so, in serving those women, we go into those communities, the worst of them, and try to pull the women that have been trafficked, and get them dignified work at our company, and train them in kind of manufacturing our products, but then also the benefits of the job and the missional components that I spoke about earlier are we pay them to go to English and Spanish classes in the morning, which is really great. We believe, and I'm guilty of this too, like living in the DR, out of respect for this country, we need to know Spanish and learn Spanish, right? Yeah. So it's really important for us to their home language is Creole, like a Haitian Creole.
Haitian Creole, yep.
French Creole, and so we wanted them to learn Spanish. The ones that know Spanish, then we put in English class. So we do that 3 days a week. We then have like a morning meditation time for them, and then we have a full-time social worker counselor, so meets with each of the women every week, and like it's a traumatized workforce. They have tons of trauma in their lives, and so they're able to talk to that counselor and work through whatever it is that week that's troubling them or someone they love. So that's really great. Then we also offer financial counseling for them, and we do that weekly with 2 women, kind of talk about their goals and what they want, and it's the same things we want, like nicer place to live,
Safety,
better
right,
house,
yeah.
safety for our kids, a better education. It's hilarious, right? Like
It's the human condition, no matter where you are, what you're doing, right?
It's like,
Agreed.
oh, you want the same things
Yeah.
that I want, right?
Yeah.
So we work with them through that, and then we also do some microloans for healthcare and documentation. So a big thing for them is not to live in fear of immigration, which even again with my U.S. passport, I don't have to do that.
Right.
Like you said, like I go to the airport and you're past your visa, go to this line, pay the thing, walk through. For them, it's thrown into a cattle hauler and deported.
Yeah.
And so we work through what goals they have in documentation and try to help them out.
Micro loan versus micro grant, let's say, is this part of the point about, hey, look, we want to make sure that this is a profitable venture that we can pour back into building responsibility for those folks? Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. So some things we'll just grant and help out with,
sure.
but we really want to instill a sense of responsibility in them and a little bit of the financial. I mean, for all of us, we have financial goals, right? And they're hard. Like you got to work.
Yep.
And so we try not to ever really hand anything out, and it's more of a hand up and try to get them going. And some of the things that we do, we'll do like a 50%, and if they complete the course or the class or the documentation, then at that point, after they've pitched in 50%, we'll gift them, a little bit more to help them out. But for us, and again, the guy that was here before me that founded all this, that actually moved back to the States, we've just found through experience that giving things away for free just doesn't work out.
It
right?
doesn't.
Yeah.
My wife has this issue, not issue, but this thing with, and she's Dominican, but the lady, the cleaning lady, everybody has their lady, right? The lady. Because I'm always like, it's like $100. Just give her the $100 or whatever. And she has shown me that, unfortunately, it's the, I get it. They're where they live, their lifestyle and everything compared to what we're used to in a country like the U.S. or Canada or the balance of Punta Cana, for that matter, is meager in comparison, or at least appears to be, even though these folks have incredible souls. It doesn't factor into that at all. But there is a give an inch, take a mile sort of thing that you have to protect from. It's unfortunate, but it's real. One thing you talked about a minute ago that I know if I'm listening to this sort of dual podcast discussion about your story, but hey, expat living in another country, you mentioned human trafficking, the movie that just came out. What's the movie?
You're like the 20th person in the
know.
last week. I forget the name of the movie,
So
but
do I.
everyone's like, they're like appalled that I haven't seen the movie, right? Like,
Yeah, me
you've
too.
gotta watch the movie.
I don't think it's here. That's my excuse. I don't think it's playing. That's what I say. It might be, but there's a lot of spotlight on that. So if I'm somebody listening to this expat episode, are you fearful, or should I be fearful, or should Americans be fearful moving to a country like this? Well, if there's human trafficking, what about my kids?
Right. Good question, and I can answer it specifically to the DR, maybe not.
Yeah, right. No, here,
Spain
correct,
or
specific. Right. Yeah, great point.
My wife and I talked about this last night. We feel safer here than we did in the United States.
Same.
That's cool.
Same.
And especially with our kids. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I could put myself in really dangerous, stupid situations
I don't-
here, just like I could in Chicago or New York. right?
Correct.
But
I don't fear a school shooting.
yeah.
I don't fear a mass shooting when I'm walking through
Absolutely.
Punta Cana Village or through the gallery, right? I don't fear that stuff. And I think about it at little, I don't know if this is where you're going. We'll go human trafficking, but in our town in Michigan, it's a great little town, and we've got these street fairs, but I look at roofs, man. I look up at the roofs while we're walking through town just to see if some psycho's up there with a gun. Never, not in a year, have I done that here. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, I mean, we've done some population studies in Punta Cana. And again, you could Google this, and I don't think it's accurate because we've been into communities that say there's 5,000 people and there's 30,000 in urban areas here in Punta Cana. I think there's somewhere between 300 and 400,000 people, kind of from like where we live to the hotel district. We've been in slums with our children walking the streets and feel it's just a different, you can't explain it till you go into a culture where children are valued in a way that doesn't to me, feel as prevalent in the United States, right? I mean, to talk about a school shooting in the DR, it just doesn't even, I mean, they don't even, you can't even talk about it. It's just like, it's like,
it doesn't, why?
yeah, like, oh, you live on Mars? Like what?
Right.
It just doesn't even compute.
Right.
So it's
Right.
wild. But we feel super safe, yeah.
Yeah, same. I feel the same. We drop our kids off at camp every day, right up the street from where we both live and everything. And I'm sure there's risk everywhere. Like you said, there is risk everywhere. But I have that same sense. I'm glad you said that because I wasn't sure if that was uniquely me. So let's talk a little bit about some of these expat questions. We're going to talk about kids and family. So the first question is, you mentioned about the 10 days, which is amazing. Anything else once you got here to help the kids adjust? This is a question from Renee, just adjustments that you had to make with the kids after they got here.
Yeah, one of our family goals in moving to another culture was to create safe adversity. We want to raise kids that are strong and not safe. I mean, I say not, like, obviously we want our children to be safe, right? But like
not insulated.
Right.
Yeah.
And we want to teach our children how to think and believe in something and not what to think and believe in something. Again, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so having those discussions with our kids on U.S. soil before we left, like again, our kids are 11, 9, and 7, but like being super honest with them, right? Like this is going to be there's going to be some parts of this that are really tough. Yeah, like going to the beach on Sunday, it's going to be awesome, right? We're going to have a good time. But like you're going to be in some hard situations, and we're going to go through that as a family, and we're going to sit down at the dinner table every night if we have to and talk about not just what was hard, but like what was beautiful about what you saw today, right? And I think talking about that before the adventure starts, but then also remembering to carve out time every day during the adventure, right? Like, let's sit down and process this as a family. Like, there's days where we're all crying. Like, this is hard. The DR is not beaches and surfboards, right? This is really hard, Yeah. Even living in, both of us, in like a beautiful neighborhood with a great community, and like it's really hard. And so processing that pre and during, I think is super important as a family for us.
Yeah. No. So we did the month here. So you did the 10. It wasn't with the intention of let's go there and see if we move. But while here, we had the discussion. It's like, what if we just move here, right? So we did a month here, half between Sylvia's family and half resorts, right? 2 weeks kind of thing. But you're right. I think it's just acknowledging from time to time, especially when there's higher emotions, that wait a minute, these kids, man, they just left their not only their school or their friends, not only their city or their state, but their country. It's a new language, it's a new culture, and we just dropped them off one day at a school. It was like, good luck, have fun. As kids are playing, I mean, English is prevalent in the classroom, except for our youngest guy. It was all Spanish for him. But they're outside playing, and it's a different language. They're they don't know what to do. I guess I participate here. So it's when they were seemingly overly emotional, overly frustrated, rather than, applying the foot, as they say in the movie Inside Out. The foot is down. Rather than that, it's some awareness, some like, okay, you know what? And again, I'm not perfect at this. Trust me. I've had my, I'm frustrated after a long day, and I don't want to hear the heightened emotion or whatever. But generally speaking, we come back to, it's really brave what you're doing, acknowledging that for them. So I think that makes sense.
That's cool. And I think too, the advice is like they're going through a lot. Like, don't feel guilty about making their life as easy as possible here, right? And again, we want like that safe adversity, but they're enrolled in an international school that primarily speaks English. They're doing soccer and horseback riding and going to the beach. And I mean, it's like they're already moving culture and language. Like, let's just create a little bit of environment for them that's like not as hard as it has to be, right? Like, you don't have to go live in a tent in Sierra Leone. Like, it's okay to have a nice house and a pool in the Dominican Republic.
That's a great point. Yeah, on the surface, if you didn't know where you were, you think it's Florida. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel different in that regard. And you're right. The schools, I mean, most expats are going to put their kids in private schools, and they range in price anywhere from, $3,000-$4,000 a kid to $20,000 a kid. Heritage, I think, is up in that range. But yeah, there's a lot of private school out, more than I even realized. The school we're going to, I didn't know existed until, and it's been there for years. 80 kids that go to the school or whatever. It's a small private school, but didn't know it was there. Learned about it in the year that we've been here. So there's lots and lots of options. What about from a standpoint of leaving family, friends behind, that sort of thing? How did that, anything for you? You're laughing. So
yeah, I mean, I'm
still
still processing this even a year and a half later. That was probably the hardest thing for us. Both of our families are in the town that we left, in the community we left. Whenever this is my belief. Again, we all have bias, but like my belief is that whenever you move on to the next stage, and like, whether it's spirituality or business or, worldview, whatever that next stage is, you inevitably leave people behind, and you appear to be critical of that stage. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when we left our community, that, we had 5 businesses within 100 yards of our family home. Right. Like people, they were open and flourishing. Right. Like people are like, what are you doing? Like, this is like insane. What are you doing? Like, why are you leaving this? This is, we lived on a lake and there's a canal and there's shops and restaurants. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And you appear to be critical of that lifestyle, right? And again, it's not that we're right and they're wrong. It's that you're leaving all this behind to go do something else. It appears that you're, not grateful, not thankful, or maybe critical of this.
Wow, never thought of that.
But the people that are still in that stage, it's just great. It's fine, right? Like they might even be getting nourishment from that stage of life, right? And so for us, it's how do we kind of make this exit or this transition in a way that doesn't appear to be like your worldview is small and ours is big and we're out of here. Does that make sense? Because at the end of the day, like all the people we love and care about, most of the people we love and care about are right back in that place we just left.
That's interesting.
And so for us, it even a year and a half later, it's like we were just home for a month, like with our families, and it's still hard for them to understand and to process. And of course, it's still hard for us to understand sometimes, right? So like, it's a challenge. And so I think it's important. Again, that's like we're Americans. Like even through this process, we kind of made a commitment as well to like take our kids back to the United States every year and let them feel really comfortable, like going to a Target and that. I've never been happy going to a Target until I went back to the United States and I'm like, oh, I can get anything I need right here, right?
Yeah.
Buying a pair of shoes that aren't triple in price, like whatever it is, just being American. And so I think all of that is really important and hard.
Did it feel any surprise feelings going back for a month?
Totally.
Like what?
This is the longest like consecutive period we've been back since we moved. I think the other part of this, and this is like, being a little bit more transparent and raw, for me, one of the other reasons that I needed to leave is I felt like my worldview was growing and expanding, and if I stayed, I would become bitter. Again, this is a reflection on me, like not a good trait, but like if I stayed, I was going to become more and more bitter, and I needed to get out of that. And so when you go back to it, all places are, again, everyone wants like the better house, the better car, all that stuff. But there's less of a mentality of like produce and consume, I feel, in the DR than there was in the United States. And so, again, when you're back in the U.S. for me this last month, it became overwhelming, like the amount of like production and consumption. Like I almost kind of felt, almost kind of felt gross. Like wow. This is a lot.
Yeah.
Like one of the things, even in our neighborhood, no one has a garage. Yeah. Like, why would you have a garage? Yeah. Like we don't have anything to put in the garage. Why would we have a garage? Right? And like I go back and my garage is like full of this, like, oh, we've got furniture in here and cars. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is crazy. Yeah. And I've been here a year and a half and I don't miss any of it.
I know.
Right? So
that's true. We have a house full of stuff still. Yeah. Basement's full of toys. People live in it. We midterm rent it, as it pops up. But that's a great point. When you were here for Fiona, Hurricane Fiona, we were in Green Village in Cap Cana at the time, and we came down with 10 suitcases. I don't know, what did you move?
14 boxes.
14 boxes, yeah. So 10 suitcases. Our little hack was we bought all first class tickets because one, they give you 70 pounds per bag, and it's unlimited. Yeah. So it was like, it wasn't one for one. Like it's not like it's not like we say the spend on first class was still higher than if we paid coach and tried to check all the bags and all that. But still, why not? Why not do a first class? But that's a little hack. But so here we are. We got these 10 suitcases of stuff that we spent so much time curating, like what comes, what stays, like what toys, what this, what that, all that, right? And we leave a whole bunch of stuff behind and everything. And that night, the roof flew off of the middle of the house, like early. It was a little piece of plastic pretty much covering the middle of the house. It was a nice house, but they had like a plexiglass, just a little piece of roof, and all this rain's coming in, and we're like, the other roof's gonna go? So my wife made the point, she's like, all of that, what are we gonna take from this giant pile of crap shit all over our house down to 10 bags, and we thankfully got 70 pounds, not just 50. It all landed literally like dog food, passports, some clothing changes, and a bottle of water in a backpack That was our go bag.
Yeah.
That was everything.
That was
Like
it.
all the other crap didn't matter in that moment because if the house blew off, we'd have to find another place to go seek shelter, and we put it all in a backpack. So to your point about stuff, yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah, we have a carport, like a carport thing at our house. There's no garage. There's nothing to store anything.
Like
so.
you buy a bike, where are you putting your bike? Out somewhere outside,
It's out
right?
in the back of the house with razor scooters for the kids. That's funny. We lived living in Michigan. We had already moved. So my wife, she came from here, but her family's in Boston, mine's in New York, and we had already moved to Michigan. I never thought of what you said though, about two things. One, that you didn't. You're a Midwesterner. See, the Northeasterners don't think like you, but the consideration for everyone else that you had. This idea of we don't want to make them feel as if we're better than them, and that's not what my intent was either. But I could certainly see where not considering what you did could come across that way. Right.
Right. Totally.
Did you ever cross that line? Do you think? Did you get feedback from your family or friends?
Oh, for sure. Right.
Like what? What did
I
they
read
say?
this. I'm going to butcher this quote, but I read this the other day. That was like, when you're writing your story and you become the villain, it's time to leave the story.
Oh wow.
And it's like, not that we're like villains,
No, I get
but
it.
like
Yeah.
at a certain point, like it becomes offensive,
Yeah.
right? Like we just don't get it. And so, yeah, the people that really love us, like, it's okay. Like, you guys do what you need to do.
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
glad you're happy. Like, we're going to come visit you, and you're going to come, like, it's great. But I think there's a lot of people that don't understand, and you have to just be okay with it, right?
Yeah. Did it feel sad going home at all?
Totally, yeah.
For the kids too, or just you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all kinds of emotion. Like your 7-year-old, after a month, they're like, are we going to stay here? Are we going to live here? Like, are we visiting? Are we like, we're back in our house? Like, what's going? So, and even my wife and I, it's confusing, right? Your emotions are just like all over the place. Because again, we're going back to, a lot of people don't have that luxury of like, we're exiting something maybe traumatic or something we want to leave behind. For us, it was like, we love this place.
Everything's great.
And we
Yeah.
love our
We're
family.
gonna try to make it greater.
Yeah, so it was really hard.
The kids coming back. You've been back, 3-4 days now?
2 weeks, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you've been back 2 weeks?
Almost 2 weeks.
Oh,
yeah.
geez, sorry.
Yeah. No,
I thought you were back 11 days ago.
Yeah.
But coming back for them, getting back here, was it relieving? Was it sad for them? That 1 year touchback. I wonder, like, does it heighten their emotion in returning, or is it a happy thing to come back after that?
Yeah, we asked them about that, before we left, and then once we got here. And I think it's mixed for all of them. Some, our middle child's having the hardest time with it. But yeah, each of them have kind of a little bit of a different answer. There's things they're really excited about. It's interesting. We thought our oldest would have the hardest transition as an 11-year-old and a 5th grader.
Yeah.
But he was like, he's all in here, right? Like, I want to go back to soccer practice and my friends, and they're basically fluent in Spanish at this point.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I think at some point they just want consistency.
Yeah.
And kind of back to your earlier question, what do they really need? They just need mom and dad.
Yep.
Right.
All right, one more question from Brady on the topic of family and everything else. And this is more a question from me, but I'll wonder from your perspective how this feels. So the question is, how much of an impact is it having your wife with a Dominican background and how that shaped your experience? What I would say to that is it just made it a little faster to integrate, but didn't make it more possible to integrate. In other words, on an easy, so we move into this area of the DR where we live, and where we live, everything is within like a 200-yard radius. There's school, grocery store, mall, hospital, barber shops, pharmacies, whatever, labs for blood work. I mean, everything's like, we can walk to it all. Right?
And you don't have to know Spanish.
And you don't have to know Spanish, right? Most know English, which, you could really be insulated. But when you go a little further north, like where we are right now, you've got more grocery stores, better priced, like Jumbo versus Nacional, better priced. You have, there's a better gym for us up in this area, like a little further north. It would have taken me longer to venture and feel comfortable getting out of that bubble if it weren't for my wife being Dominican and just like, let's just go. So it might probably shorten my integration from months to weeks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know for you, not having a Dominican wife. I mean, your wife is from Indiana, but
I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. I will say too, like, even just knowing like, oh, you guys go to Boca de Yuma and you can negotiate with the guy in Spanish, what price of the boat. I mean, I would just say like, maybe like the fun stuff too. It's easier to like, right? Like, dicker with the guy.
it's
at
definitely
the
like
fruit
when we're driving 6 hours north. If a flat tire, I got pulled over. It's nice to have this. It's good and bad actually to have the Spanish-speaking wife. The good part is she can have the interaction. The bad part is in some of these pockets, like the lack of ability to interact actually may serve you, and they'll be like, all right, just go.
Right.
They'll like leave you alone.
That's what every time I get pulled over, I just don't say a word of Spanish.
Right. Yeah, the little I know.
Do you feel like her family's from Higüey, right?
Yeah.
Like there's got to be Punta Cana is like its own country.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you go to Higüey, does it feel different?
Very.
Yeah.
Very. You mean
with your wife and the Spanish and her background there and her culture there. Yeah.
Higüey would be like what you see in movies when they drive through like Baghdad.
Yeah.
Like if you you know what I mean, like just it's not a bad place, but it's busy, it's
Right.
crazy. Like when you come here to Punta Cana, it's a new country, you know that. So the driving, you can tell, like you said, if there's anything I feel danger in the DR, no bullshit. It's on the roads.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
buses,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
trucks, like they're nuts. They go first, look second. Like that's literally the way the Dominicans drive. So Punta Cana is you can tell the difference in driving, and it's a little crazier, and people make their own lanes and run red lights and all that stuff, but nowhere on the order of an Higüey. So to drive into Higüey or to go into Higüey, I would be white knuckle panicked the first time through if it wasn't for my wife. It's just, people are in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
The roads just have these giant missing sections of it. It's busy. There's people everywhere, Like,
Right.
God forbid I break down here. What's going to happen to me? I wouldn't know. Now, I know now that, like you said, people are just going about their lives.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares, that I'm driving through town. Some gringo's driving through town. They're going about their lives. They got work. They got family. They have what they got. But it definitely her in the car and knowing that she's connected to the area and from there. Oh yeah, I would not have ventured into Higüey other than.
And that's
guided
where I would
tour.
say I'm envious of your situation, right? Because it's like, if things go bad, like you at least can communicate in a way that like I have to like pump myself up to go to the car mechanic, I'm
Do you use the
'cause I'm
kids?
terrified. All the time.
So do I.
They hate it.
Yeah. So my older one especially hates
Yeah.
it. He plays dumb sometimes, and then later he'll be like, "No, he didn't say that. He said this." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me that in the moment?" So that's funny. So yeah, that is an advantage having her around, having her do what she does.
But
so.
culturally, she's an American.
Yeah.
She's an American, right? Like I would say even for her, there's some culture shock here.
Big time.
Yeah.
The time to get things done. She went to get her citizenship card, the cedula they call it here, right? Took her. I think she told us it took her like 4 8-hour days at what would be like a DMV, just being sent to this line and then go downstairs, and there's no order. There's no, that's the cultural stuff too. Like it's not efficiency. Efficiency is secondary to labor here because labor's so cheap.
Totally, yeah.
Like you drive through and see these fields, these sugar plants, like acres and acres. There's dudes with machetes out there because they're getting paid $2 an hour, I would guess, right? Versus buying the equipment and what you would view as, oh my God, so much more efficient if you got a $2 million machine rolling through those fields. So I think there's a, this is my take. You tell me what you think. But I think that labor, because it's so cheap, because it's so inexpensive, it's leveraged a lot more. So the efficiencies of technology and everything else are behind in that regard.
Absolutely.
You feel that way?
Absolutely. All
Is
the
that,
time.
is that a fair assessment,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
am I underthinking something?
No. I think
Okay.
it's it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I sound somewhat smart then. Thank you. All right, let's dive back into your story. Then we're going to come back and talk about what did I write down? What are the other categories here? What did I do with my paper? We'll talk about taxes and financials, other abroad considerations, and then the final, the most commonly asked question. This is only I can answer this, actually, this final answer. I don't think you can. We'll see.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so you've got the business with Mudlove. What is the scalability of a business like that? So like I've been to your facility. I've been to the headquarters. When you walk in, you've got again, you do actually leverage efficiency. Being in America, you've got an efficient operation. But if I wanted to say, I said this to you, like host an event down here, and the event was called, the Enlightened event. I could come to you and say, I want these really cool clay ceramic bracelets made custom, emblazoned with the word enlightened on them. Can you make me 20 of those? Yeah. And you have your price point and you would charge that. And you've got all these different things, soccer balls, all really cool stuff. And people buy them, I'm assuming wholesale in other countries, US, Canada, wholesale to put on their shelves, as well as retail buys for different things. So you have all of that going on. What's the scalability? What's the top end? Is it infinitely scalable, and how do you do that?
Good question. It's really hard to sell bracelets.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard. It's really hard. And that's not all we do, but it's like at the end of the day, it's really hard. But yeah, all kinds of sales channels. We distribute in 50 states wholesale, Amazon.com. You got to scratch and claw at everything, right? Talked to a friend of mine that was running a $500 million company in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I'm like, give me some advice. Like what do we focus on this? And he's like, yeah, you focus on every freaking sales channel you can, and you scratch and you claw, and like this is what he's doing at a $500 million company. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not making me, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And with the economy, and I mean, retail's hard.
How has that impacted you?
Yeah. And, we definitely feel it. We made a shift as kind of the downturn halfway through last year to try to sell more value-driven products.
What do you mean by that?
So like we discontinued some of our like higher end product. Like we did a $40 coffee mug. Like it's gone. Like let's replace that with more like bracelets or these smaller clay letters for $5. And so with our different distribution channels and rep groups, that seemed like a better fit to kind of get in more on lower cost items. So I think that was a good decision. But yeah, we definitely feel the economy in the downturn. I mean, you're reading reports of like massive retailers that are sitting on $1 billion of inventory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough market. It's
100%.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, have you looked at premier products? Like coffee mug is sort of mid-tier, it sounds like, but have you explored premier products, like appealing to the upper crust, if you will?
Yeah. So one of the, we could get into like the whole import export thing, but obviously for us, like producing a high value product that doesn't weigh much and exporting it to the United States is where the kind of the secret sauce is here.
Yep.
So we have a jewelry brand called Belkai, and our entry point wholesale is $3,000 for like this jewelry bar experience. And so we produce all that here in the DR as well. But that entry point for us is perfect, right? Because it's like low weight shipments with high value. Like that's
what is it? It's a jewelry.
It's like gold and silver jewelry brand called Belkai.
What do you get? So I order it. What do I get?
Yeah, so like as you're a store, you would order like a $3,000 jewelry bar. And your customer would come in and like pick different necklaces and rings and like all this stuff and make their own, like have their own experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that doing well?
We just launched that this year, and it's we were just in the Atlanta trade show and launched that, and
nice.
So it's really fun.
Is Amazon your best distribution network right now?
Great question. I would say for us right now, we made a shift to bulk sales, and so I still think bulk is probably our number one channel, just like .com bulk. And then number two would be wholesale.
When you say bulk, who's buying in bulk?
Oh my word. Good questions. Companies will order a couple thousand bracelets.
For what? Like,
churches.
Give me an idea for a company.
Yeah.
Church makes sense, but.
A company will go to a trade show and want to give a giveaway, right? And they'll order 5,000 bracelets, like Sony, right? Like,
yeah.
And because, wholesale we're $6 a bracelet. It's like, we're kind of in that ballpark of like, yeah, I could give that away at a trade show.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Got it. The wholesalers, are you in any like a Target, Walmart? Is that a goal? Is that an ambition? Or is that not really what you serve because of the sheer size of those?
Good question. I think we would consider that opportunity for us kind of like a Hallmark, like we're in Hallmarks and we're in, kind of those like mid-tier stores.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of a nice fit. We really love the boutiques, even though it's more work. It's like, that's more of our brand and kind of, persona is like the smaller, owned boutiques, like under 10 store kind of chains.
What does this look like from an exit perspective? What are you planning for?
That's a good question.
Never?
No, I mean, we're always thinking, it's like, I've been just been taught, right? Like, what's the exit? Like, you're always like, what's the exit strategy, right?
Yeah, when you started out. I mean, not that it's like, oh, I want to do this. Like, some people are so like, I've got an exact plan, I'm going to execute it. But as you think about 5, 10, 15 years from now, is it just, hey, look, I see potential in building this brand, becomes a cash flow engine, I systematize my way out, it's a passive venture, or no, we can roll this up to X?
Yeah, I think, I guess maybe this answers your previous question too that I kind of skirted, but we believe it's scalable. I don't think it's infinitely scalable, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like clay goods.
Yeah.
But what we've found is that we still have a niche in like near-shore contract manufacturing and packaging, which we primarily do for our company, but we are starting to dabble in it for other companies that don't want to tell the story of China anymore. They might spend a tiny bit more, but at the end of the day, we still have, $2-3 an hour labor. So to tell the story of nearshore contract manufacturing or packaging, and oh, by the way, you get our impact story, which we don't want to own that. We want you to tell it, and it can be yours, and it can be either internal in your own company, like, hey, look who's making this thing or packaging this thing, but also like, feel free to tell it to anybody.
Tom Shoes type of.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
When you say go back to China, what did you mean by they don't want to tell the China story anymore?
Yeah, I just think what we're seeing by manufacturers and companies, especially Midwest is huge in manufacturing, right?
Yep.
Is that story of Chinese production is there? People are starting to look for other options. Not that it's a bad thing now.
No. But
it's like
That makes sense to me. But I have a build up to this. But go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. So, we see people searching out either, near shore or made in the United States.
Are you seeing, is there a movement? I mean, you keep hearing about, globalism, offshoring, coming back home. Mexico seems to be a spot that it's not going to be like everything's down in China, everything's up in Mexico. It's going to take time, right? There's a lot of consideration there. Midwestern United States, as you reestablish industry and everything else there. Are we seeing it here in the DR? Is the DR, like, it always felt to me like the DR is right. There's plenty of labor, plenty of willing people. Is this a spot that starts to replace Chinese production work in any way, made in DR as opposed to made in China? Are you seeing that right now?
Yeah, good question. I was talking to my friend about this when we were back in the United States. Tell me if I'm wrong. I've met a handful of American families that live in the DR out of 12 million people.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
No, I know. People say that, like, a ton of Americans. I'm like, no, I know you guys.
I can look at Miami from here. Like, where is everybody at?
I don't get
what's
it either.
going on?
Right.
And not only that, the Dominican Republic has these zona francas, which are free trade zone agreements with the United States for zero import-export tax. Like, why is everybody not down here making stuff? Right?
Why aren't they?
Yeah, and I don't get it. And that's where we're like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make stuff and tell a really great story, and we're going to scale the thing, right? Like, I want 1,000 Haitian employees that are, these shanty towns and communities that I took you through. Our goal isn't to improve them; it's to freaking destroy them.
Right.
Like, we want those things gone.
Yeah.
Like, let's all get these people, these women, and these amazing artisans living in concrete apartments with kitchens and.
These are single room, dirt floor, maybe a light bulb, no running water, shared bathroom, right? Like
20 people sharing a shower in an outhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, a hole in the ground. Yeah.
Right behind, like you said, some of the most exclusive resorts in the world.
You can walk to a $10,000 a night hotel.
Yeah.
Right? It's unbelievable.
It's two different worlds. When I had not seen that part, and I drive by it often, I had not seen that part until you drove me through it. So that's interesting. So the DR, okay, my instinct has been, just by being here, and it's just a feel, like this feels ripe for utilization as a world economic power from a production standpoint, right? Again, labor is still more inexpensive. It should be more, right? Labor should be more than what they're being paid, what people here generally being paid. But even if you double, triple, quadruple the cost of labor, that's a good living, and it's still cheap as far as keeping your costs down overall. So yeah, I don't know, why hasn't the DR been? Do you have any theories?
I do. We'll see who listens to this in country, but it's a really interesting, I like to say it's not even the top 1% here. It's like the top 0.1% control the entire country. They control the educational system. The reason it's so bad is because they want it to be bad. They want, of the 12 million people, they want 11.999 million never earning more than $1 an hour, right? Again, this is like a year and a half of being here. No idea if
I
I'm
hear this
right.
from locals. I
Yeah.
hear this from our landlord. Talked about this the other day. Went to dinner with him. He had the exact same take. So continue.
And if you go to a school like our kids go to in Punta Cana, international school, your kids go to, it's like this is the top 0.1%, right? And those kids are invested in because their families own businesses or well resourced or whatever. They're learning English. I mean, you can't buy a book in the DR. There's not a library in the DR. There's not a post office in the DR. Why? Because they need to keep everybody.
It would be easy.
Blue collar. Yeah.
Right? Like the infrastructure is here.
Yeah,
it's
totally
organized
here.
that way,
Yeah. And so I think you have this this like small percentage of upper class that are controlling the country, and they want to keep it the way they want to keep it. There's kind of a classic story here, but an American guy shipped in a container. Like there's some guy here that owns all the light bulbs. Right? So an American's like, I'm going to open a store and sell light bulbs. Ships in a container of light bulbs. Family meets him on the dock. They're like, we're going to let you bring in this container. If you ever bring in another container of light bulbs, you will not exist.
Wow.
So there's also that perspective of like, it's extremely hard here as an expat to enter into the economy.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you're going to become a problem.
Are you a problem?
I hope not yet. But
I mean, has been any indication or threat or anything that you're a problem?
No, not yet. We're still under the radar a little bit, but I mean, once a week, my wife says, like, just be careful, right? Like,
if you are a Dominican resident, does that change the paradigm, or is it still, no matter what, it's the top? Like, in other words, if you have a Dominican partner, that's the face, the head, everything. Even if you're operating in the background.
It's a great question. It would help a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you're still a gringo, like stepping on toes at the end of the day, but it would help for sure.
Is there a way into that top 1% in order to partner with to bring what needs to be brought here?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? You get big enough, and I mean, you're going to pay a tax of some sort, or you're going to be stopped. And so I think that's the key, is when you get to the point where people are noticing you, that you make a good partner here in country and work together.
What I do, meaning I have this podcast and kind of the downline through it, where I don't have a reliance on, like, we're going to talk about taxes. For me, there's zero tax implication for me either way. I'm an American. I'm paying the same, state and federal income tax as I did when I lived in Michigan versus living here. So for me, it's really no different. But I do feel like this is set up for me. We love having somebody with, some means to come down here, put money into the economy, go to our restaurants, resort weekends, spend, live, rent from our owners, all of that stuff. Like, I'm incentivized to be here. Tourists are incentivized to be here. But to operate a business here, you're saying that's where it's like, okay, now you've gone too far.
Yeah. Once you reach a certain point, right?
Of revenue.
Of revenue, and of who are you pinching out, right? I think you can enter into certain industries here, which is what kind of we're trying to do, and not step on toes to a certain degree, and kind of fly under the radar a little bit. And then once you're ready to not fly under the radar, you better be ready. Be ready.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Do you have competition here in country?
Not really. We have We have about 30 hotel and resort accounts here in country, but other people are producing goods here. But there's a surprisingly few amount of Dominican-made products that are quality enough to be at a Dreams or a Secrets or a resort like that.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of competition in country.
That's so shocking to me. Mm-hmm. We talked about it before, it'll work out, abundance mindset. I think I Googled this. I think there's 9 billionaires in country, 9 billionaires that are Dominicans, not just somebody who moved from somewhere to, buy a house in Casa de Campo or something. So 9 billionaires out of 11 million people, or whatever the number is, that live here. That's that 1%. But my God, I mean, if you could think of the explosion of industry that could happen here in a place like this, just simply by saying, hey, we want to be the new China, or it's not enough people to be but you get my point. We want to attract back, what's overseas, keep it within this hemisphere, and that's the thing. I think if you look at population dynamics, if you look at the deglobalization effort that's underway already, the North American continent wins. We're a net exporter combined, right. all of really U.S., Canada, Mexico. Net exporter of everything: potash, food, gas, oil. Net exporter. So if we don't send anything out, we can perfectly take care of everything within, which creates famine in other parts of the world if we're not in Africa or whatever. It feels like the top 1% in a country like this are smart enough to see, hey, why don't I align in this hemisphere with what's going on? I'm not going to let Mexico take our stuff away from them. They're going to make so much more money. But you do see it. Electric is another one. Solar. Solar is a problem here, is it not?
It's unbelievable. I mean, we've scratched the surface of kind of diving into that, but you don't see. I mean, we've heard stories of people trying to bring in solar and are shut down, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's just prime and ready for just a massive solar.
And again, because that's all we have is sun.
Yeah. Every day, all the time, right?
Every day, all the time. I mean, you get some gray days, but not many. Maybe a hurricane blows through. Yeah. But those in charge of the electric grid, and electric is expensive as shit down here, man. I pay $500-600 a month for electric in our house. We probably overuse it, but still, that's a lot. I mean, $200 a month maybe in the U.S. Yeah. But those in charge of the grid have zero interest in having something dilute that profit margin.
Exactly. Zero interest.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, let's get into some of the tax stuff. You started to touch on it. So let me go through my questions here. So how do you, the question is from Romaine, how do you optimize U.S. taxes? To start with, is all your income distributions for U.S. LLCs? Mine is, but give me U.S. tax considerations. What you're operating down here.
Yeah.
What do we know? What do we need to know? What don't we? Don't do? What's the benefit? What's the downside of taxation being here as a business operator?
Great question. Different in all countries. Here for us in the DR, we still receive U.S. dollars in U.S. bank accounts, K-1s, distributions from LLCs. We keep it all in the United States. And the magic number is 330. When you're out of the country, 330 days in the United States, there are no taxes. So and that's not just this calendar year, that's 12 consecutive months.
You just spent 30 days though, man.
I know.
Was it 30?
I crossed over last year, which hurt. Yeah. So this year it's my accountant's don't cross over that point. I also have heard, but I can't confirm this, that there is a prorated amount if you do cross over the 330. So you're not going to be at 100. You're not going to be fully
Yeah.
taxed, but
They start to dilute it
right.
or kind of track it down.
But 330 is the magic number. So I think it can become really a benefit on taxes if you can hit that 330 out of country and not have any federal or state tax.
And that's that. By the way, the days counted is any moment of any day spent in the United States or its territories.
A second on U.S. soil.
Yeah, you land in Miami at 11:53 p.m. on a 34-day trip or 35-day trip. That's day 36.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah. I got the same from an accountant. Yeah. But on the 330, so let's say I'm an investor or an owner, business owner in the United States. I've got 3 different entities, all U.S.-based LLCs, and I'm going to come down here. I'm not going to operate anything down here, but I'm going to live down here I'm not even going to go back. 365 days next year. Is there another level that I need to consider in order to take advantage of that 330-day tax haven that you mentioned?
Yeah, good question. I don't think so. I mean, is there another level of benefit?
Meaning, no. Like, what else needs to be in place? Like, can I just move here for a year, not
totally.
have any business operation in this country, and still benefit from that exemption?
Yeah, that 30-day fine goes up to 10 years here. To leave country with no visa, there's a fine a scale up to 10 years.
What do you mean by that?
Like, you could live in country here for 10 years, walk through the airport to fly back home after 9.5 years, and you're not going to, they're like, here's the fine amount.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what are you exempted from by being here 330 plus days?
My understanding is federal and state income tax.
All of it or a
100%.
certain amount? 100%. Gotcha. And check with your CPAs on
please
all of this stuff.
Listen.
This is our understanding. If somebody's listening like, no, that's wrong.
I mean, to your point, like, let's say you are back 160 days.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be worse.
Right.
And, there's parts of the DR that are cheaper to live in. I think Punta Cana is probably, for me, double the cost of living of Indiana.
Double the cost of living for us as well. Yeah.
And part of that is, we're not like doing much different than we did there.
No.
It's just
rent's double our mortgage. Cell phone bill, we were kind of stupid with that, but cell phone bill, we pay the international plan on our existing phones. We just didn't want to deal with it. So that ends up with, some overages here and they're doubling up our cell phone bill. Electric is double, although we don't pay for heat. Maybe there's some, but we have gas. Labor's the cheap part. Our pool guy, I think he's like $30 a month. He comes 6 days a week. He's not there long, but still, it's like $30 a month. Our cleaning ladies, they're about together. We have 2 of them that kind of switch off where we spoil ourselves. But that's $800 a month combined. And we're paying, kind of like you, we're paying like double what we're told the going rate would be for those 2 ladies to come in on different days. They're not both there 7 days a week, but labor's cheap, but everything else is pricey. Sales tax is 18%.
Sales tax is 18%, plus a 10% lay at a restaurant. You're at 28% tax on food.
Right on top.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So gas is $5-6 a gallon here.
$6 a gallon.
Right? Versus what was it in Indiana when we went back?
It was
3?
3 something. Yeah.
Right? So I think that's the question becomes, well, how do people survive if they're making $1 or $2 an hour? And I always explain it's like 2-bedroom apartment for $130 a month that has no air conditioning, nothing, and there's multi-generations living in that household.
Exactly.
So 2 bedrooms with grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, kids, maybe older kids who are also contributing to that household income. It is really incredible. Yeah. It is really incredible. All right, so that's the tax question. It's another tax or everything else. Oh, here's one. I don't know if you. I think I know the answers. I've kept hearing how you can't be out of the U.S. This is Dorothy for too long, or you can lose citizenship or certain rights. So how could someone live abroad for a year or more?
You can live abroad.
Yeah.
You can renounce your citizenship in the United States at some point if you want, which you can Google that. There's like very, very rarely that's a good idea.
I looked at this one. It's because I was like that. I've never heard that before, and I don't want to be wrong. Again, talk to your attorney or whatever. But if you have residency, you're not a citizen in the U.S. This does become true. If you leave for a certain amount of time, like you're essentially like giving up or abandoning your residency, your visa status. Right. But if you're a citizen, unless you are an enemy of the state in some way, literally, like unless you've become. Who was the guy that was killed? He was drone killed he became part of ISIS. I can't remember his name, but in Pakistan, I forget. But if you become an enemy of the state, then I guess your citizen can become renounced. Right. Citizenship can be renounced, but it's like very, very, very high standard.
Right. And unless you do that, you will always be welcomed on U.S. soil.
Correct.
It feels. Even when we go back, it's like this feels good.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. 100%. So, there's no truth to that unless you don't have if you're a citizen, you're a citizen. There's no truth to that whatsoever. You can look that up and Google it and everything else. This question is a bit lengthier. It's from Tim. He was saying I think he's pretty much getting at, my intent is to continue to grow my businesses in real estate. How would someone pivot from single-family real estate to purchasing and managing a business while living the expat life and scale? Interesting question. I don't know if you're not doing that. I mean, you structured your businesses back there in partnerships where you're completely passive. So
Right.
they're not relying on you operationally.
Right,
But any thoughts on that? How do you pivot to owning and managing a business while living the expat life and scaling it? Thoughts?
You don't? I don't know. It's really hard. I mean, one of the things I've learned is you just have to be proximal, man. You got to be, to me, my management style is like on the ground, shoulder to shoulder. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still have a brick and mortar shop back there, and we still have a U.S. team. And I have a hard time remote work. I have a hard time managing them remotely. I have a hard time leading them remotely.
Yeah.
For every hour I feel inadequate, they feel like it's 4. Like, it just takes a lot more work to manage a team remotely.
Yep.
And so people do it. People are really good at it. I'm not.
Right.
Like, I'm not, and I don't like it. I don't like doing it. I want to sit just like this with you and look at you and have a conversation and look at you in the eyes. And, like, that's me. It's possible. I think it would be really hard to scale without being, it depends what business it is, right? Like, is this going to be a tech company or a restaurant, right?
Yep.
Like, I think it'd be really tough to scale without being proximal.
Agreed. I think the answer to you said it a second ago. In my mind, I was like, I would avoid brick and mortar. I would go online business of some sort, where your entire footprint is virtual. That's what I have. My businesses are online for the most part, right? Like, there's not much. My real estate portfolio I partnered in order for me to be in a investor relations / capital raising role, but I'm not responsible for day-to-day operations. That the people on the ground, our partners on the ground, are there, boots on the ground to physically see it. So, like you said, a piece of the equity as opposed to trying to own the whole thing,
Right.
and being remote helps in that regard. So,
And you're the real estate guy. I would say in that space, it might be a little bit more feasible, right?
Yeah.
To not be on the ground every day, all
Yep.
the time, right?
You get back. Real estate's easier. I mean, if you have a good management company, you have enough scale where you have a management company that's running it, and you can physically check in. If you have friends locally here and there that can help out, if God forbid something happened, but you're going to go back, right? Go back every 6 months and check up on your portfolio. That makes a lot of sense. One other question: have you learned a reason or time frame when you shouldn't travel abroad? Was flying back to the U.S. challenging for anything you attended? I think he's talking about me attending events. They would be concerned about that. So is there any time frame or reason where you shouldn't travel abroad? This is from Paul.
Interesting question. Our family doesn't travel in August because most of Europe is off in August, and we just find places to be really busy.
Yeah.
So I think, especially in the DR, you get a lot of European influence. In that, a lot of people that live in the DR leave the DR in July and August. And I think, too, families with resources just, it's hot. Like, you got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so we find here in the DR the best time to leave is July and then August till school starts, which is why we left for a month in July. So for us personally, I think, for sure there's times when it's not great to travel. Like, I mean, even just going to Europe in August can be frustrating when restaurants are closed or people, it's hard.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, there's not like a siesta thing here, but the summer's hot. Holy crap! You picked a good time to go back.
Yeah.
This last part of this section, the kind of living abroad considerations, and we talked a little bit about this, but just maybe a couple bullets. Like, what do you see the benefits and the downside? Just maybe a couple of specific bullets compared to living in the United States. Living here, let's start with benefits. What comes to mind when I say, hey, what's the upside of living here versus the States?
Tough question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you touched on, like, service here is really great.
Yep.
And it's really inexpensive, and you can. I mean, even just you employing those 2 women at your house, like, changes their life.
Yes.
And
mine.
feels real like a great value to you and yours, right? Like, you
Oh
don't
my
have to cook.
God.
You don't have to cook
We do
anything.
nothing in our house.
I mean, it's unbelievable,
right?
And as an American too, like, you just kind of feel weird. At least we did. Like,
we do too.
This lady's folding my underwear, whatever. But they don't feel weird, and you're employing them, and they love it. Yep. And you know what? You can be gracious and kind to them, and it's even better for them. So, huge benefit there, right?
Yep.
Like, inexpensive labor is great. Gardeners, pools, all the service stuff, unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Huge benefit. For us specifically, we also don't feel like we go to one of the best our kids go to one of the best international schools in the country. and we don't feel like the education is up to even the public school that we went to in our community.
Interesting.
So that's been a big challenge. I talked to a guy that lived in Nicaragua for 14 years. Kids went to an international school, and it was like 2 levels above where he thought the U.S. was. So for us here in the DR, we feel like it's a little bit less. Mm-hmm. So we have that struggle, which sounds like you have. Like, do we homeschool or get a private tutor or go to school so they experience the social thing? And so I think that for us is a big drawback. And I don't think anyone's ever 100% happy at the school their kids are at.
Right.
So that's been tough for us. On the challenging side.
No, agreed. The positive is definitely, the lifestyle you're able to afford. Like, if you want to talk about you're an entrepreneur who wants to focus on what they're great at, you can outsource everything very inexpensively, comparatively. And to your point, almost to a guilty degree, right? Like, God, I haven't cooked a meal, I haven't washed a dish, I haven't done any of that
stuff. You don't have to drive a car if you don't.
You're right.
Hire a driver.
You could find a driver. Absolutely. So all of that is really, really beneficial. I think the biggest negative for me, boy, I don't know. Like, people ask about Wi-Fi. Like, there's no issues, right? I have no issues with internet connection. I have no issues. I mean, this is the studio, right? This is an incredible studio. I go to Austin every so often and rent a studio there. There's a couple different ones. This is on par. It's the same, it's well done, great equipment, high end, like the stuff that I do, kudos to you guys. The stuff that I do is able to be accomplished here. You can find it, The downside, this is going to sound so first world, but it's delivery of Amazon products.
Yeah.
It takes forever, like 10 days sometimes.
And it has to be under $200. Yeah,
it's insane. We have that cargo place in the middle of the village. I met your wife there not long ago. I saw her in there. You go in and you're just in this mass of people trying to get your boxes. Like, it's
unreal.
But I guess the overall, like, you take for granted, you said it before, like, I like physical books. Yeah, like, if I want a book, I can have it the next day in Michigan, Florida, wherever you might live in the United States, Indiana. Here, though, like, to get a physical book, that's an ordeal. So Audible's just easier, or Kindle or something like that. Again, first world problem. I mean, big time. That's not like, you can still get the book, but you definitely have to alter a little bit of how maybe you've done things in the past. But infrastructure-wise, I don't see any difference, at least where we live.
I mean, we've had friends be like, why don't you live in St. John? And it's like, well, there's, like, I live 5 minutes from basically a Whole Foods grocery store here. Like, I can have blazing fast internet. There's amazing schools. 100 restaurants. Like, I think visiting those places can feel really great, but living somewhere, like, for us, just like you, DR is great.
We have a barber that comes to our house to cut the boys' hair. So privileged. So privileged. It's ridiculous. There's a couple other cleanup questions on this. Were there any, oh shit, I need to get back to the United States issues that popped up for you? Did you have any of those?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I read too spoke to health insurance. And so for us, that was a big decision. We ended up for the first year keeping some U.S. health insurance and also picking up DR health insurance.
Yep.
So DR health insurance here is interesting. It's a little bit more like socialized, like almost like Canadian socialized structure. But for us now, we're 100% DR health insurance, but we have a supplemental policy that will airlift us to Miami if we get hurt.
Interesting.
And I don't know who determines that. Like, if you're in the ambulance and you're like, fly me to Miami, hopefully the right guy makes that right.
I have the card. It says you're supposed to do it.
Give me the helicopter.
Good point. Yeah.
That for us, I think we've had, I fell off a roof, almost cut my finger off last year. I mean, it wasn't
here?
Yeah. It wasn't a huge deal, but you still have that, like, I don't want to go to a Dominican, if you need to, like, get cut open here, like, you don't, that's a no shit moment, right?
Yeah.
Like I need to go to the United States. So I think for us, that it hasn't really happened yet, but like that would be that moment for us where we just don't feel good about going into the best hospital in the DR.
Yeah. You're right. The big stuff I would be concerned with. The private hospitals or private clinics are pretty good. They're state of the art, right? So I had to have a colonoscopy about 4 months after we got here, and I did it at the place in our village there. And I'll be honest, it was, I don't know. This sounds so bad. It was amazing. It was amazing to have this thing shoved up my ass. No, but the whole process was really good. It was very, it was what you would expect if you were in the U.S. It was the same sort of process. It was state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art training for the doctors that are there. Public hospitals, though, to your point, whatever. You cut yourself, you need a couple stitches, no big deal. We have we had a dental issue for one of our kids late at night, and we had to go, and they took care of it. But cut off a finger or something more intense, surgery, you're bleeding out, and that's the part that would concern me a little bit as well. Yeah. So, we never bought health insurance here.
Really?
Yeah, we have our home health insurance. It was actually a health share company. Yeah. They actually approved to pay for my whole procedure, everything from the ER visit that got me there because of a stomach issue, I was having a GI issue, through all the consults I had to do and the blood work, right through the being put out and having the colonoscopy. They said, hey, we'll cover it. But our initial unshareable amount, our IUA on that policy, is $2,500. So we pay the first $25, and that entire cost was $2,100. So it was under anyway, so we didn't end up having to use it.
And pharmaceuticals here are super cheap, right?
Very
we don't
cheap
even
and easily accessible.
Card,
You don't even need a prescription for stuff a lot of stuff that you might, if you're in the United States. So we haven't knock on wood, we haven't had anything that's popped up that's been, oh shit, we got to get back to the to the U.S. Right. But that's a big one. What was the other question I saw here? Medical expenses we talked about. Was there something else? Expat passports, second passports. Have you gone down that rabbit hole?
No, not really. As in like a DR passport?
Yeah, to have one.
We've gone down the road. We have a local attorney here in Santo Domingo and one in Punta Cana, but they advise us, and it's really, and this is a big firm. Like, we were referred from a firm in Indianapolis that we went to, and legit law firm, and he's like, just keep paying the fine at the airport. It's cheaper. It's $50. Easier. Yeah. Like, don't try to even get a visa. Like, it's crazy. I mean, for an attorney to tell you that, right? Like, you'll be all right.
That's the privilege of being from the United States, though, or UK, or a developed nation, if you will. My wife, that's an advantage my wife gives us to some extent. She's already a citizen since she was born here. She got her residency card when she moved here, which, again, 4 visits, but otherwise not too bad. The boys are citizens now because she's their mother, and all of them are getting their passports. Now, me, just because I'm married to her, doesn't give me that same rite of passage. So we're figuring out if it's not too bad, and it's less about needing the visa or anything like that, and it's more there's something about, I don't know, maybe it's the conspiracy theorist in me, like just that other country's passport. That's to have cool. That. If I have to get to some nation I can't get to with a U.S. passport, or that they wouldn't, when the zombies come. When the zombies come.
That would be cool.
All right, cool. All right, so we talked about I have the last category here. I'll share here in a second. The most commonly asked question. But we've talked about your businesses. What's sort of next for you? Like, what is you've got, I've looked at your outline here. You've got like 4 or 5 current businesses. You've got 6, 7 that you've exited. So you're a serial entrepreneur in some ways. Like, can you stay engaged with only these enterprises for much longer, or are you
really good at digging shallow wells, right? And then, moving on. Yeah.
What's next? I was thinking that when I read through, I'm like, this guy, you're what, 40, 41 years, 42 years old?
41, yeah.
41? Yeah. So, you've got a lot of time to start the next thing. Like, what are you dreaming about? What are you thinking about? Maybe concept, and you're not gonna do it, but like, what's next?
Yeah, I love the question. So I think, again, for us, it's like, how do we scale impact on the ground here? We one thing that I didn't plan on before coming is how much we were going to fall in love with the educational, kind of like the school second mile mission nonprofit side of things. And so we're working on a school concept right now that has a lot of local schools here are split into two parts of the day, right? The AM and the PM. So we have an AM program that's all in English, $180 a month to go to school in English with a really great curriculum. This is in the worst community in Punta Cana, right? Yeah. $180 a month to go to that school. As we start to fill up that morning program, it subsidizes the school completely. So the PM program then kids can literally go to school for free in Spanish. So that model is appearing. It's only been 1 school year that we've had that model, but it's looking really like it's going to work. And so then if that works, then it's like, let's scale this model of school in the DR. Yeah. And the afternoon program too, if the child's not fully subsidized by a U.S. family that's donating or through our organization, it's like $80 US a month for the child to attend the afternoon program. Which, again, to your point about like like even a low resource family here will scrimp and save to send their kids to that $80 a month U.S. school, which they could afford if they really needed to, right, and had a job. So I think scaling private education here is a new goal.
Yeah.
I also think we've really fallen in love with some of the amazing, the Haitian culture and the amazing talent that we found living in dirt floors in a shanty town. Again, 30,000 Haitians living pretty much without a job right next door. We've met nurses, we've met doctors, we've met tech students from Port-au-Prince, we've met, incredible people that are sleeping on the ground. And so again, I think as we're here in country and really digging into this community, it's like how many of these people can we employ and empower to do amazing things? Because when you start to look at Haiti right now, it's
hell.
It's a terrible place.
Hell, it's awful. It's so terrible. Like birth lottery again. You're just born in Haiti, and God, president's killed, and it's run by gangs. It's just a terrible
Cosmic lottery.
Yeah.
It's really tough. And so it's identifying if again with the contract manufacturing and packaging, it's like if we had a company that was like we need 1,000 employees, I'd be like, I'll have them tomorrow, and they're going to be great, like unbelievable team. Yeah. And I think that's one thing here, like you were saying, business wise in the DR, that it's just ready to go. Yeah. It's like tell me a city in the United States you can hire 1,000 people tomorrow.
I'm telling you, man. I know. I thought of that even from an immigration perspective, like why the United States is not creating inroads to talented workers here to fill needs of jobs that pay well that, most Americans don't want to do anymore. I mean, there's such talent here, such incredible talent and drive and resourcefulness here. For Second Mile Mission, $80 a kid a month. How do people tune into that? How can people help that? How can people donate and help you with that mission?
I appreciate you throwing the
of
question
course.
out to us. So secondmilemission.org on the website. You can sponsor a student.
That's 2ND Mile Mission, right? The number 2 ND second milemission.org.
Like the second mile. Yep. So you can sponsor a student there. I'm not sure if they can reach out to you on your podcast, and love to talk to anybody that wants to help out and get involved. Come for a visit, come for a tour.
Well, to that end, so I'm hosting an event down here in November. I think I told you this. I think you agreed to this. I hope you did. If not, I'm asking you to. Hosting an event down here in November. A portion of those proceeds will be donated for those that attend, to Second Mile Mission. And I'd love to have the attendees take a tour, the tour you gave me, essentially, through your operation, through Second Mile Mission, through these shanty town shacks and all that stuff, to really get perspective on the folks coming down here are in a place where they're trying to go from incredible to next level in life. And I think that grounding sometimes can be like, wow, all right, yes, of course, celebrate your ambition and go, but always, always, always keep that perspective and stay grounded in gratitude. And I think going through with you, talk about a moment of perspective. No shit. It was unbelievable. So yeah, we'll be supporting you as well through that, and hopefully we can get folks to come through and see all that you're doing there. What about with Mud Love? So again, it's a mission focused. This isn't just like, hey, I'm selling a product, please buy it. Like you've got a mission behind this product. Mudlove.com.
Yep, mudlove.com. We're on Amazon. Shoot us an email. We can tell you a local store probably somewhere close to you could buy our product. But yeah, Amazon and our .com are the easiest ways. Shoot us an email. We can price out something bulk, corporate gifting, school fundraisers.
I love it, man. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. We'll get it all socialized. So, all right, let's go with the last question that I got. Where is it? Let me find it.
You said this one's just for you, too. So
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, because I'm looking at you, and I think the question is just for me. So the question is,
I know where you're going.
This is from Senor Prashant. I don't even know who that is. I want to know how one can live in the Caribbean for as long as you have and stay pasty white. You're a dermatologist star student. Here's the thing. Like you bake. Like you've got this nice, easy baked look, right? Like you absorb sunlight and then it manifests in this glow. I light up in flames if I step in the sun. Like I go from white to red within 6 minutes flat, right? So there's no joy in me in letting the sun really hit me for too long a period of time. Yeah. It's just going to be like a very uncomfortable night's sleep, 2-3 days of pain. I was born. It's funny, my family's Italian, so my mother, my father, my sisters, they're all olive complexion, and they get dark. And of course, my wife and my boys, thank God, they got her complexion, to an extent. Like when they get sun, you could see it. Their booties are white, still way darker than me. But the rest of them is just this nice, like you, nice bronze. But I didn't get it. Your family? I'm trying to think of your family. Your wife, she's tan.
My wife's blonde haired. She's got a little bit of a tan, more than you.
She absorbs
for sure.
tan. Yeah.
I was driving through our neighborhood the other night. I saw you from like 8 blocks away. I'm like, oh, there's Jamie.
Yeah, there he is.
So,
like Christ glowing in the middle of the corridor there. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. I do go for a walk every day in the sun. Believe it or not, I go down to the gallery there. I go down there it's a 5-minute walk from my house. I'll go down and back, maybe take a phone call. So I get 5-10 minutes of sun a day, unprotected, no whatever. Yeah. And honestly, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, he's got a tan.
Right?
I'm witnessing this. Yeah.
He's leaning in.
Yeah.
He's leaning in like, is there one?
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of a distinction there. But no, I just don't. I don't tan. I burn. So good lighting hopefully will make it look a little bit better than I normally do. So appreciate you doing this, man. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. It's great to hang out.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.